Back now at 7:43 with a father's emotional fight for his son and daughter. Christopher Savoy flew to Japan last year to bring back his own children after they were taken there illegally by his ex-wife. Instead, he ended up in jail in Japan and has not seen or spoken to his kids since. We'll have an exclusive interview with him in a moment, but first, how his painful ordeal unfolded. On his son's 9th birthday last October, Christopher Savoy wrote this letter from behind bars.
And I've been cruelly torn from the fabric of his life by this crazy injustice.
At the time, he was locked up in a Japanese jail after being arrested for trying to reclaim his children from his ex-wife. Now he has no idea where 9-year-old Isaac and 7-year-old Rebecca are.
It's worse than a death. At least with a death, there's closure. But I'm still left worrying about my children's welfare every day. They're alive. They're out there. I just don't know where.
What does that do to a dad?
It's horrible.
Last year, Christopher divorced his wife of 14 years, Norika Asaki. The split was bitter, and despite agreeing in court that the children would live in Tennessee, Christopher says his ex-wife immediately began talking about taking them to Japan for good.
If you don't play by my rules, I'll have to go and take the kids, and you'll never see them again.
So you tried to get a restraining order to keep her from taking the children to Japan? But after she testified under oath that she didn't really plan to move the children to Japan, a Tennessee judge decided no restraining order was needed. Just 5 months later, Noriko and the children were gone. That was when this 39-year-old father decided to take matters into his own hands. You make a decision, I'm going to go to Japan, I'm going to get my kids back.
They couldn't call me a criminal. They're my flesh and blood children.
Christopher sneaked up on his ex-wife as she was taking the kids to school, snatched the children back, and made a desperate dash for the closest U.S. consulate, 47 miles away. He was arrested before he even made it inside. You spent the next 17 days in jail. Your attorney described your treatment. He said it amounted to torture.
12 hours a day of interrogation without a lawyer present, and the hygienic conditions were just awful.
He was released only after promising to leave Japan and never contact his own children again. His attorney, Jeremy Morley, says the outlook is bleak.
It's most likely that he will never see the children again until they are adults.
That's because Japan isn't party to an international treaty that would require it to promptly return a child abducted by a parent. In fact, Japan has never once returned an abducted child to the U.S., a sobering reality that leaves this father with a heavy heart.
I love them, and I'll never give up on them. And I'm always here. Daddy loves them.
Christopher Savoy is with us exclusively. Christopher, good morning to you.
Good morning.
You haven't seen your children in 8 months. You don't know where they are, and as your lawyer just pointed out, you may never see them again until they're adults. I mean, that's a nightmare for any parent. How do you hold on to hope, Chris?
Well, today there's going to be a resolution introduced to the floor of the House of Representatives condemning Japan for this kind of behavior and not allowing children who've been abducted to interact with their flesh and blood parents. And I think that that's a step in the right direction. I think the American public knows that this is not acceptable behavior by a civilized nation.
Yeah, the resolution also calls for Japan to return the children, but it has no legal teeth. So why do you believe that the Japanese government will pay any attention to it?
Well, I think this is just a first step. I mean, this is we're friends, we're allies. Friends don't let friends drink and drive, and friends don't let friend nations abduct children.
And yet that has been the pattern. Your children are among 231 kids who have been abducted to Japan in just the past decade. Overall, since 1994, you told me 269 children have been taken to Japan and not returned, not one of them. Why do you believe that Japan has refused to comply with international law?
I know, it's a black hole. The children go in, they don't come out. I think that there is a feeling of entitlement that, well, if these children have even one drop of Japanese blood, that's where they belong.
So is it part cultural then, do you believe?
Partially. And the other problem, though, is a lot of people would say, well, why don't you just go over there and get visitation? The other problem is, unlike other countries, there is no visitation. There is no enforceable visitation for another parent, unfortunately.
In fact, if you're in Japan, a couple where both parents are Japanese and there's a divorce, the wife automatically gets the child and the husband loses all custody.
Right. And so there are over 10,000 fathers in Japan.
That are watching this case as well?
Who are watching this case, and some of them have written to me, and they are very much in support of us and these American families that have been impacted by this policy, and they want change. They can't see their own kids in their own country.
You know, we've talked a lot in recent years about the case of David Goldman, whose son Sean was taken by his ex-wife to Brazil. She never came back. After 5 years, he finally regained custody of his son last Christmas. How is this case different?
Well, this case deals with Japan. Brazil has problematic cases, but they're still party to the Hague Treaty. In David's case, it took years, but he was able to use the court systems there to finally make the right decision. Japan hasn't returned one child ever. That's the difference. So it's an absolute black hole. I mean, there is hope that international pressure, and pressure from the American public can actually change this.
Chris, do you think that your children will ever know how desperately you are trying to reunite with them?
I hope so. We're using social media at backhome.org. It's an organization of parents, spelled without the K because our kids are missing. We have set up videos of the parents and a lot of information that can hopefully help use the internet to get our kids to know that we're out there, that we love them, that we miss them.
I wish you the best of luck today.
Thank you very much.
Christopher Savoy, thank you so much. And you can see more of Christopher's story on Dateline Sunday at 7, 6 Central Time, and that's right here on NBC.